All right, let's dive into one of the oldest and most powerful stories out there. It's a tale about sibling rivalry, about a gift that gets rejected, and about a jealousy that spirals so far out of control it leads to the world's very first murder. Yep, we are talking about the story of Cain and Abel. So here's our game plan. First, we'll meet the brothers. Then, we'll get into the offering that lit the fuse on their conflict. We'll walk through the crime itself, then explore the fallout. And finally, we'll ask what this ancient story can still teach us today. Okay, first up, let's meet our key players. You have to imagine a world with only one family on it. These are the first sons of the very first humans, Adam and Eve. Right away, the story sets these two up as total opposites. You've got Cain, the older brother. He's a farmer, a guy who works the soil. And then there's his younger brother, Abel, who's a shepherd looking after the flocks. So from the very beginning, they represent two completely different ways of life. So how does this simple difference, a farmer and a shepherd, lead to such a disaster? Well, it all starts with something that was meant to be a good thing, an offering to God. See, both brothers bring a gift from their work, but there is a massive difference here. Abel brings the firstborn of his flock, like the absolute best he has to offer. Cain, on the other hand, just brings some of the fruit of the soil. It's kind of vague, right? And God's reaction says it all. He's thrilled with Abel's heartfelt gift, but not so much with Cain's. And that rejection is the trigger for everything that comes next. Instead of maybe thinking, hey, what could I do better next time? Cain just gets furious. He's filled with rage and jealousy. All he can see is that his brother was accepted and he wasn't. God sees Cain fuming and actually gives him a way out. He basically says, look, if you do what's right, you'll be accepted. But if you don't, sin is like a predator crouching at your door. It's a pretty clear warning. You need to master this feeling, or this feeling is going to master you. This brings us to the most tragic part of the story. This is the point of no return, where that choice gets made and all that jealousy just boils over. Cain completely ignores God's warning. He just can't shake that feeling of being second best, of being rejected while his brother gets all the praise. He lets that poison of jealousy just sit there and grow. And this setting here is so important. Cain invites his brother to go out into the field with him, away from everyone, away from their parents. This wasn't some spontaneous fight in a crowd. This was planned. It was premeditated. And out there, in that lonely field, the struggle that was happening inside Cain becomes brutally real. All that rage that had been festering, it finally erupts. He attacks his brother, Abel. And just like that, it's over. Abel is dead. With that one act of violence, jealousy leads to the very first murder in human history. The whole thing started with a simple offering, and it ended a life. So what happens now? How does Cain deal with what he's just done? Let's get into the immediate confrontation and the consequences that come crashing down. When God asks Cain, "Where is your brother?" his response is just stunning. He shoots back with a question of his own. Am I my brother's keeper? That one resentful line has echoed for thousands of years. It's the ultimate way of saying, not my problem. But there's no hiding what happened, and the punishment really fits the crime. Cain, the farmer who stained the earth with his brother's blood, can no longer make the earth grow crops for him. He's cursed to be a restless wanderer, exiled from his land and his family. When Cain hears this sentence, reality finally hits him like a ton of bricks. His defiance just melts away and is replaced by pure fear. He says the punishment is more than he can bear, and he's terrified that as a wanderer, anyone who finds him will just kill him. And this is where the story takes a really fascinating turn. In response to Cain's fear, God doesn't take back the punishment, but he puts a mark on him. Now, this mark of Cain is so often misunderstood. People think it's a mark of shame, but the text is clear. Its purpose was protection. It was a divine warning to everyone else. Do not harm this man. So, after going through all that, what are the big ideas we're supposed to take away from this story? Let's try to boil it down to the key lessons. So what are we left with? Well, for starters, this is a huge flashing warning sign about the destructive power of jealousy and anger if you let them run your life. It also tells us that our intent matters. Giving our best is just as important as the act itself. Of course, it screams that our actions have real, serious consequences. And finally, that mark of Cain. It introduces this really complex idea that justice can be mixed with a strange kind of mercy, maybe to stop an endless cycle of revenge. And that leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. The story ends with a severe punishment, but also a surprising act of protection. What does this tension between justice and mercy really tell us about how we should deal with wrongdoing? It's a question that's just as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago.